how we've really been leaning into the fact he could be a legitimate antidote to the Joe Rogan sphere, right? The manosphere, the podbrosphere, all of that stuff. And I really started to think this morning and a little bit last night, I was digging and I realized there's not a lot that you can find of Joe Rogan himself addressing the Riyadh Comedy Festival. Certainly not over the last couple of days, right? A lot of controversy surrounding a lot of people that he has
all his
associated
friends,
with. Literally all his
Dave Chappelle, Andrew Schultz, like hell of his friends were there.
Santino,
yeah,
Bobby Lee. The list goes on and on, right? These are all people that you, in the center of their orbit is Joe Rogan, right? These guys are all Dave Chappelle aside, he's got his own orbit, but he does definitely overlap with Joe Rogan. And he's been, mum is the word. He hasn't released any clip on his Clips channel talking about the Riyadh Comedy Festival. He hasn't had any of his regular comedian guests on since the beginning of the Riyadh Comedy Festival to talk about it. He has gone completely radio silent on the matter. But do you know what I find really interesting, Gavin? I finally found a clip where he talks about it with none other than Tim Dillon. And it's when Tim Dillon is still under the impression that he's going to be performing in Saudi Arabia. And I was genuinely surprised by Joe Rogan's reaction.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. I haven't seen it. And obviously, as we've talked about, Tim Dillon was originally slated to appear here, but then his offer was like revoked essentially because he made some jokes
about slaves. They were really sensitive about that, apparently.
Yep. Even though those jokes were in the context about how he was taking the money to shut up about the slaves, he was still referenced the slaves, in their existence and the exploitative economy over there. So that was too much. But yeah, I'm interested to see this.
Sweet.
Looking at these,
my Islamophobia and my love of bacon are completely separate things.
Not only that, you can go to Muslim countries and yell, "I love bacon." There's no laws against it.
I will be doing it at the Riyadh Comedy Festival very soon. Get your tickets. Get your tickets.
Are you really going to go there?
Of course I am.
Wow.
Why would I not? Would they kill gay people and women? By the way, we've said that about, we say this about every Muslim country is throwing gay people off the roof all the time. By the way.
Oh, Gavin, he's actually woke. Tim Dillon's actually woke, and that's why he's going to Riyadh, because he wants to dispel the problematic narratives about Muslim people. Wow, it's an act of bravery, not cowardice.
I mean, I think the point he's trying to make is that, like, so that just means, like, comedians aren't allowed to step foot in any Middle Eastern country because they're all backwards and, they oppress people and stuff.
Right, like, he's trying to woke bro it.
Right. But, I think the difference, if we're actually going to respond to that, is that I actually wouldn't have, I said this before, but I actually wouldn't have a problem with comedians just doing a show in Saudi Arabia or in Iran or in, pick your fucking poison, whichever Middle Eastern country you want, throw a dart on the map. I don't really give that much of a fuck. It's more the fact that the government is paying them to do it at an officially government sponsored event. Like, but yeah, if there was just some comedy club in Oman or Bahrain or Saudi Arabia or the UAE that one of these comics decided to book for like a stop on their tour, I wouldn't be up in arms. I wouldn't be offended. I've low-key even defended people's decision to perform in Israel in the past, like artists and stuff, which I know is extremely controversial, but I think you could make the same argument why artists shouldn't be able to perform in America, right?
Bad Bunny style.
We're funding fucking Israel. Yeah, exactly. Bad Bunny recently made that argument. So again, it's a complex issue, but I do think there's a big difference between just like being like, I'm going to this country to play independently for my fans there, which inevitably exist, right? There's gonna, if you're a global celebrity, you're gonna have fans in every fucking country. So I'm sure that Tim Dillon does have Saudi Arabian fans, right? I wouldn't have a problem if he just went there to do a show at a comedy club. The problem is that he's being sponsored by the government specifically to whitewash their crimes and all that kind of stuff. So you know what I'm saying?
Oh, no, I completely agree with you. That's why I think it's a total cop-out for him to act like he's really just going over there because he cares about dispelling the hurtful tropes that we have peddled in America for all these years about, the Middle East and what it's really like in majority Muslim countries, right? I'm just going over there to be a real woke guy. I want to dispel all of this hateful nonsense because I totally agree with you, right? Like, maybe I wouldn't go play Tel Aviv. I'll be honest, right? Maybe I would skip that one. But to your argument, plenty of other places in the Middle East, because it really is difficult to make the argument like, oh, you can't play in this place, but you will play in the United States. I would compare or analogize what Tim Dillon would have done and what all of the other comedians did do to play in like a giant comedy show at the White House. You know how UFC White House is coming up, and it's going to be this giant Dana White spectacle on the White House lawn where it's clearly designed to drum up popularity for Donald Trump. It's going to be tethered to the 250th anniversary of the United States, all this big celebration, right? It seems like this is like the equivalent of something like that, but happening in Riyadh because people don't want, and directly coming from like the Saudi ministry.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly the problem. It's like they're specifically participating in this like government of it, because again, like as many issues as I have with America, I would never hold a fucking artist or comedian response. I would never like be mad at them for performing here. But yeah, I would be mad at them for performing at a Trump sponsored event like we just mentioned with the UFC thing. That would be a pretty obvious, signal as far as where their sympathies lied.
Yep, 100%. But let's keep watching because Joe chimes in.
Okay. I obviously don't agree with Saudi Arabian policies on women and things like that.
Yeah.
Is it my business to tell Saudi Arabia how to live? Truly.
How big was the check?
$375,000 for one show.
Nice.
That's not bad.
That's pretty good.
That's not bad.
I'll take that.
I'll watch a behanding for that.
Behanding?
Yeah. It's called a behanding. What happens is they cut the hand off the thief.
Yeah.
Here's
Don't
the thing.
steal.
All the people that have yelled at me for this are also pro letting migrants and refugees into America at very high numbers. Now, the same religion that is supposed...
Are you fucking kidding me? This is actually low-key insane. Oh, because the fucking king or the prince of Saudi Arabia behaves in a very brutal, murderous, violent fashion, and all of his former subjects who flee his persecution are also violent terrorists and like what?
Yeah, I don't even really understand the point he was making. Like, if anything, Saudi Arabia is helping contribute to the migrant crisis with their war in Yemen and their slaughter of innocent people, causing a literal refugee crisis. Like, now he's going to complain about the fact that there are other countries that those migrants have nowhere else to go but. Yeah, I don't get it.
And pretend that they're all as violent as the people who are doing the fucking bombings that
is
are
that
forcing
his point?
them. I think that's what he was saying. He was like, "Oh, if you think that if you think the prince," and we can go back, but I think his point is like, "Oh, if you're gonna say that all these people are problematic for how they run their country, well, you guys are letting those people into America." And it's like, no, dude, nobody is talking about having Mohammed bin Salman move to America. We're talking about the people who are fleeing his persecution.
Yeah, my beef is not with the innocent citizens of Saudi Arabia.
Also pro letting migrants and refugees into America at very high numbers. Now, the same religion that is supposedly so terrifying that I cannot spend 24 hours in that country is the same religion that all of these migrants and refugees...
Oh my God, that's so annoying. The problem is not Islam. The problem is the fucking theocracy. That's like saying that'll be like someone being like, well, you have a problem with Israel, but you don't seem to have a problem with these Jewish people living in America. It's like, yeah, that's because my issue is not with fucking Jews or Judaism. It's with the barbaric fucking government of Israel that uses Judaism to commit human rights atrocities. Same thing with Saudi Arabia and Islam. Jesus Christ, these people are so fucking stupid.
Same thing with the United States and Christianity at times.
Pretty supportive of that are coming over.
Yeah.
So it feels weird to me that people are getting on a moral high horse and going, it is so dangerous to go to Saudi Arabia for 48 hours. Why?
Oh my God.
Well,
Nobody was critical about that. Nobody was saying it was because it was dangerous for you. They were saying, fuck you for doing propaganda for what is it, monarchical regime? I keep wanting to call it a fascist regime because that's what's always on the tip of my tongue.
It is fascist.
Yeah.
It is. It's a fascist, theocratic, monarchical regime.
They do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Why do they do that? Well, they're this religion is crazy. I go, okay, but then who's coming into our country?
Lets you know who he's talking to. He's like, their religion is crazy. Like, nobody is saying that. Nobody is saying that unless you're talking to a weird, deranged, out-of-touch Islamophobe. Maybe in Austin, Texas, that's the conversation you're having.
How differently do they feel about all of these things? And then if you poll them, they don't feel that differently.
No.
Like,
there's no room for dissent.
Right. So
in that religion.
So people that are somewhat radicalized
in
on
Islam?
in that religion.
That's what he's saying.
That are
Yeah.
coming
There's no
into
room for dissent. Isn't there like multiple? Isn't there like a whole different sect of Islam
Yeah, Sunni and Shia
that like exists to be less conservative and more like chill? Like, I am no expert in this shit. No, don't get me wrong. If I talked for much longer, I'd probably make an ass of myself. But I know just enough about Islam to know that that's bullshit.
America are supposed to be greeted with open arms, and it's not compassionate, and it's terrible if you suggest that we shouldn't take all of those people because they may not assimilate as easily as people from European nations. You're called a racist, a Nazi, and whatever. But if you want to go to one of those countries that is,
oh my God, this is
luxurious.
Shut the fuck up, bro.
It's why it's crazy when sometimes we'll get comments that are like, Tim's actually a progressive. And I'm like, no, he's not. He's literally not. He's so far from a progressive. He's a Republican.
Nice. You know, then you're attacked because your morality. I have to, in order to perform in Saudi Arabia, I'm supposed to agree with everything they do. That's crazy.
Yeah. No, there's no logic in a lot of the thinking. I mean, it's silly. But what they're doing with allowing mass migration in the UK, you see it in.
So either way, they just go on to bitching about immigrants after that, and I thought that was pretty. I thought that was pretty strange because I thought that either Joe Rogan would say, "Oh, I turned it down." I thought that he would do something to kind of distance himself from it, but instead he stayed 100% neutral.
At first, he did he was like, you know, like, I don't know if that's a good idea, like, you know what I'm saying? But then he immediately like caved to Tim Dillon.
It was like a tepid sarcasm at the beginning,
right? And then as soon as you realize, like, oh no, Tim is taking this money, he is going there. He realized, like, okay, well, I don't want to make this awkward. I don't want to be perceived as like woke scolding Tim Dillon for taking this money, this blood money. And again, there would have been a way for Joe to address that where he didn't seem like a moral high horse woke scold. He could have made jokes about it. Again, these people are fucking comedians. They're supposed to use the power of humor to make a lot of these observations and criticisms in a way that doesn't come off like virtue signaling. That's the whole point of being a comedian, is you're going to use the power of fucking comedy to point out all the evils and, you know, horrible things in the world without sounding like a fucking annoying woke scold political commentator or whatever. You know, you just got to be funny. And that's what they could have done with this scenario. It's why I was saying yesterday, imagine how much fun Bill Burr would have had if instead of taking that money, he had roasted everyone else who did. We all know how good Bill Burr is at roasting people. Imagine if he had turned that fire on his fellow sellout colleagues instead of having to be one of them.